Get up in the morning, slaving for bread, sir, so that every mouth can be fed. Oh, me Israelites, get up in the morning, slaving for bread, sir, so that every mouth can be fed. See, shut them a tear up choices ago. I don't want to end up like Bonnie and Clyde. Israelite. After a storm, there must be a calm. Catch me in the farm, you sound your alarm.
My stomach hurts. My neck hurts. Everything hurts. Some water or something. Please. Please. I can't breathe all the time.
Shut up.
They gonna kill me, man. Oh! No!
Damnation and eternal fire. Damnation and eternal fire. Damnation and eternal fire.
What is slavery? What is indentured servitude? What is chattel slavery? Is there a difference between the two? Does the Bible promote indentured servitude, or does it really promote chattel slavery? Let's begin with understanding indentured servitude. The Merriam-Webster Dictionary says, indentured servant is a person who signs and is bound by indentures to work for another for a specified time, especially in return for payment of travel expenses and maintenance. Simply put, indentured servitude was voluntary, but with guidelines and constraints. Indentured servitude was a mutual agreement between two parties for a specified time, and this agreement was not perpetual. The children of indentured servants were not part of the contract agreement. This agreement or judgment was used to allow individuals or families to pay off their debts through manual labor. The law of indentured servitude is in the Bible, and the practices of it was not limited to the Hebrew Israelites. Other nations such as the ancient Egyptians and the ancient Sumerians had indentured servants. See, the guidelines to this practice among the Israelites can be found in the book of Exodus, chapter 21, verse 1 through 15. Now let's define chattel slavery. I believe many truly do not understand how degrading and oppressive this system really is. The etymology dictionary definition of chattel slavery says, property, chattels, good, wealth, possessions, property, profit, cattle. This word comes from the late Latin word capital, which means property. It also tells us the application of this word is to slaves is from the 1640s and later became a rhetorical figure in the writing of abolitionists. So remember, each time you think about the word chattel, think about the word cattle, because chattel is synonymous to the word cattle. Chattel slavery among the Israelites is forbidden and can be found in the book of Exodus, chapter 21, verse 16. Now that we have defined indentured servitude and chattel slavery and located the associated law, statutes, and commandments that governs it, let's get a better understanding of the differences between indentured servants and chattel slavery. Also, let's use this as an opportunity to address a very deceptive narrative that began during the former President Obama's administration. Irish lives matter too, or the Irish were slaves too. And lastly, we got over it, so why can't you? This is coming from an article titled Debunking a Myth. The Irish Were Not Slaves Too by Liam Stacks. It has shown up on Irish trivia Facebook pages, in Scientific American magazines, and on white nationalist message boards. The little known story of the Irish slaves who built America, who are sometimes said to have outnumbered and been treated worse than slaves from Africa. But it's not true. Historians say the idea of Irish slaves is based on a misreading of history and that the distortion is often politically motivated. Far-right memes have taken off online and are used as racist barbs against African Americans. The Irish were slaves too, the memes often say. We got over it, so why can't you? A small group of Irish and American scholars has spent years pushing back on this false history. In 2016, 82 Irish scholars and writers signed an open letter denouncing the Irish slave myth and asking publications to stop mentioning it. Some complied, removing or revising articles that referenced this false claim. But the letter's impact was limited. The legal differences between indentured servitude and chattel slavery were profound, according to Matthew Riley, an archaeologist who studies Barbados. Unlike slaves, servants were considered legally human. Their servitude was based on a contract that limited their service to a finite period of time, usually about 7 years, in exchange for passage to the colonies. They did not pass their unfree status onto their descendants. Contemporary accounts in Ireland sometimes refer to these people as slaves. Mr. Tolkien said. That was true in the sense that any form of coerced labor can be described as slavery, from ancient Rome to the modern day human trafficking. But in colonial America and the Caribbean, the word slavery had a specific legal meaning. Europeans, by definition, were not included in it. So again, the word slavery had a specified legal meaning. Europeans, by definition, were not included in it. See, an indentured implies two people have entered into a contract with each other, but chattel slavery is not a contract, says Leslie Harris, a professor of African American history at Northwestern University. It is often about being a prisoner of war, being bought or sold bodily as part of a trade. That is a critical distinction. Here is another source that makes a clear distinction between Irish indentured servants and Negro chattel slavery. This is coming from an article titled Barbados Slave Codes from African and African American Studies. The Englishmen who wanted to engage in this business had to decide who to send to Barbados to grow, harvest, and process the sugar cane into refined sugar. This was not an easy task, but these Englishmen did have a number of Irish prisoners serving various sentences. They decided on a way for these Irish prisoners to work off their sentences on Barbados sugar plantations. They sent thousands of indentured Irish prisoners to Barbados between 1627 and 1807. More than 400,000 Africans, mainly originated from West Africa, had been brought to Barbados as slaves to work on sugar plantations. The English planters would request and receive more slaves whenever they believed they needed more for the plantation. The Africans were viewed as nothing more than interchangeable machine parts in the process of sugar production. The treatment experienced by the Africans was among the most inhumane in human history. Starting in 1640, Africans were thought of as inferior to Englishmen. Africans were not thought to have the capacity to be intelligent. In consideration of how dark skin color was defined as life or lesser value than light skin color, legal codes naturally evolved out of these attitudes. Which leads me to the Barbados Slave Code of 1661. The Barbados Slave Code served as a template in establishing slave laws throughout the Caribbean, South America, and the United States. Here's 3 laws that was included in the Barbados Slave Code of 1661 to give you a glimpse of how our people were treated. These codes also provide answers as to why our people are treated a certain way in this country, why we come on the short end of the stick in this legal system and in other legal systems around the world. Barbados Slave Code of 1661. If any Negro or slave whatsoever shall offer any violence to any Christian by striking or the like, such Negro or slave for his or her first offense be severely whipped by the constable. For his second offense of that nature, he shall be severely punished, his nose slit, and be burned in some part of his face with a hot iron. And being brutish slaves, they deserve not, for the baseness of their condition, to be tried by the legal trial of 12 men of their peers, as the subjects of England are. And it is further enacted and ordained that if any Negro or slave under punishment by his master unfortunately shall suffer in life or member, which seldom happens, no person whatsoever shall be liable to any fine therefor. I want to reiterate this point. Some of the Irish at one time in the Americas were indentured servants and was never subjected to chattel slavery. These Irishmen were prisoners who was convicted of criminal activity and were allowed to work off their sentences in Barbados. Lastly, what does the Bible say about chattel slavery? The book of Exodus chapter 21 verse 16 says this, "And he that stealeth a man and selleth him, or or if he be found in his hand, he shall surely be put to death. The Hebrew word that transliterates to the word steal is pronounced ganab. Ganab means to thieve, to deceive, carry away, and steal as in a way. To steal, steal away, carry away. Your eyes did not deceive you. Your ears did not deceive you. Ganab transliterates to steal away. So is it simply a coincidence that one of the most famous Negro spirituals, steal away, origins come from the Hebrew word ganab? Is it simply coincidental that the most famous Negro spiritual, steal away, lines up with Exodus chapter 21, verse 16? Is it a coincidence that in all Negro spirituals that uses the word Israel is referring to Negroes identifying themselves as Israelites? Absolutely not. Perhaps this is why Nat Turner used steal away as a call to battle to bring judgment upon all the Catholic Christian slave owners of that time who broke this law. See, contrary to what many believe and teach, the Bible never taught inflicting cruelty on indentured servants. There are biblical laws against manslaughter in regards to indentured servants. The book of Exodus chapter 21 verse 12 through 15 says, "He that smiteth a man so that he die shall be surely put to death. If a man lie not in wait, but Yahweh delivered him into his hand, then I will appoint thee a place whither he shall flee. But if a man comes presumptuously upon his neighbor to slay him with guile, thou shalt take him from mine altar, that he may die, and he that smitteth his father or his mother shall be surely put to death." How many of our ancestors were kidnapped, raped, and murdered? In other words, raptured. Because rapture means act of carrying off. Seizure, rape, kidnapping, a carrying off, abduction, snatching away, rape. Most people who speak against the Bible and those who actually teach the Bible are unaware that there are biblical laws that prohibit physical abuse of a pregnant indentured. The book of Exodus chapter 21 verse 22 says, "If men strive and hurt a woman with child, so that her fruit depart from her, and yet no mischief follow, he shall be surely punished, according as the woman's husband will lay upon him, and he shall pay as the judges determine." There are biblical laws against physical abuse, such as causing an indentured servant to lose an eye or a tooth. The book of Exodus again, chapter 21, verse 26 and 27 says, "And if a man smite the eye of his servant or the eye of his maid, that it perish, he shall not let him go free for his eye's sake. And if he smite out his manservant tooth or his maidservant's tooth, he shall let him go free for his tooth's sake." There are biblical laws against any indentured servant who's injured from tools or machinery. The book of Exodus chapter 21 verse 28 and 29 says, "If an ox gore a man or a woman that they die, then the ox shall be surely stoned, and his flesh shall not be eaten, but the owner of the ox shall be quit. But if the ox were wont to punish with his horn in time past, and it hath been testified to his owner, and he hath not kept him in, but that he hath killed a man or a woman, the ox shall be stoned, and his owner also shall be put to death." So is this why the Christian and Catholic Church teach against what is now called the Old Testament? Is this why the Christian Catholic Church are still teaching the scriptures through the lens of the plantation owner? The lens of the plantation owner. The lens of the plantation owner.
Hush, little baby, don't say a word, don't say a was gonna buy you a mockingbird.
A popular chant heard at Gator Games is being discontinued by the university in the interest of cutting ties to its racist origins. Racist origins. Racist origins.
But the Gator bait chant will no longer be endorsed by the University of Florida because of its origins. Because of its origins. Because of its origins.
Fuchs wrote, quote, "While I know of no evidence of racism associated with our Gator bait cheer at UF sporting events, there is horrific historic racism imagery associated with the phrase. The phrase's racist history dates back to a practice of using black babies to lure alligators from the swamps as recently as the 1920s. The phrase's racist history dates back to a practice of using black babies to lure alligators from the swamps as recently as the 1920s. The phrase's racist history dates back to a practice of using black babies to lure alligators from the swamps as recently as the 1920s.
Hushabye, don't you cry. Mammy's little pickaninny gon' get a present mighty soon. When them stars am a peeping and the moon it am a creeping, then mammy gon' sing this tune. Shut your eye. By and by, man will whip you if you cry. Someone am a coming through the gate. Go to sleep, don't you peep. Listen to me tell you, use mammy little alligator bait. See, these words of this song were written by Henry Wise, and the music, Lord have mercy, composed by Sidney Perry. For the play, Mammy's Little Alligator Bait. Mammy's Little Alligator Bait. Mammy's Little Alligator Bait.
Well, look, this come out perfect here. 13. And you pull that through there, see? Now you pull on one of those. That's perfect, that's good. There you go, pull tight. There you go, that's good. There you got it, boy. There's your noose. Now you make one. Just like fishing. Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. Good boy.
Sleep, 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 my little yaller baby. Mammy loves you so. Close your naughty little eyelids. Use the sweetest little coon I know. Great big gators going to eat you if you don't hush mighty soon. Then they knows it when my baby cries. Sleep, my little sunman colored coon. Juicy ripe persimmons, mighty fine to eat. Waiting for my baby in the morning. Just about the color of my baby so sweet. Honey going to eat them soon. Gators am uneasy when they hears you weep. Mine I gives you timely warning. Mammy going to rock her little dusky babe to sleep. Mammy going to rock her little dusky babe to sleep. Mammy going to rock her little dusky babe to sleep. Deuteronomy chapter 28 verse 37 says, "And thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword among all the nations where the Yahweh shall lead thee." What is an astonishment? What is a proverb? What is a byword? Does this prophecy and these words truly give an indicator in identifying the true Israelites? As I go through these key words, really think about the state of the Negro. Think about how all the Negroes in the United States, the Caribbean, South America, such as Brazil and other nations around the world, are treated. The Hebrew word that transliterates to the English word astonishment is Shema. This word means ruin, desolate, desolation, waste, horror. The Hebrew word that transliterates to the English word proverb is mashal. This word means poem. It means parable. But a key understanding to this word that's not included in this definition is that this word also means object of scorn. See, the Hebrew word that transliterates to the English word byword is shanai na. The Israeli pronunciation is shanina. This word means taunt. Now think about the state of the so-called black community. Think about the state of Shema, the state of ruin, desolation, the horror, and the appearance as if it's a war zone. Think about gentrification, which is the actual reason for the death of Breonna Taylor. The poem I read is one of many racist lullabies in the racist book titled A Book of Lullabies. The lullaby I quoted is titled Sleep My Little Cinnamon Colored Coon, which continued to promote the usage of our children as alligator bait, alligator bait, alligator bait.
We are now reminded of where we must look for wisdom in times of pain and confusion. Leviticus 25. And you may take the sojourners living as aliens among you, and they may become your property. Become your property. Become your property.
In 1837, Hosea Easton, a black minister from Hartford, Connecticut, was one of the earliest black intellectuals to write about the word nigger. In several pages, he documented how it was an omnipresent refrain in the streets of the antebellum North, used by whites to terrorize colored travelers, which is a term elite African Americans with the financial ability and personal inclination to travel used to describe themselves. On reflecting upon the ways that the word nigger impacted colored travelers, Easton painted a picture of an urban landscape which little urchins of Christian villagers pestered black men and women as they passed. He said white parents and teachers used the word to instruct children that blacks were deficient, but also to show how their own racial status was precarious. They disciplined white children with stories of nigger boogeymen and promised a child would have no more credit than a nigger if she misbehaved. Children absorbed their racial lessons and reacted with open hostility when they saw real black people. White children taunted, "See nigger's lips? See the flat nose. Nigger eye shine. That slick looking nigger. Nigger, where you get so much coat? That's a nigger priest." This is how so-called white Christian parents taught their children hatred towards our community. This is how they taught their children to disrespect well-respected and accomplished men and women from within our community, which includes those who were priests. To add insult to injury, the adults would join in as the children would mock adult men and women from within our community. Men and women from within our community. Men and women from within our community.
Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. You better wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water.
I am sure by now, the racist blackface Valentine's Day gift card have caught your attention. I want you to pay attention and make a note of the writing at the bottom of the card on display. It says, copyright 1906 by Raphael Tuck and Sons. Here's another postcard published by this company and copywritten by them. In 1904, they produced this postcard of a famous white blackface performer named Bert Williams, who were the founders of this publishing company. Raphael Tuck and Sons was a business founded by a Jewish immigrant named Raphael Tuck and his wife in Bishop Gates in the city of London in October 1866. They specialized in selling pictures and greeting cards and eventually selling postcards, which was their most successful line. Their business was one of the best known in the postcard boom of the late 1800s and the early 1900s, and their contributions left a lasting effect on most of the artistic world. Not only did Raphael Tuck and Sons create pictures, greeting cards, and postcards, they also created a children's book series titled Father Tuck's Nursery Series. See, this series includes the book titled 10 Little Nigger Boys, 10 Little Dollies. Here's a sample from this book. 10 little nigger boys going out to dine. One choked his little self, and then there were 9. 7 little nigger boys chopping up sticks. One chopped himself in half, and then there were 6. 2 little nigger boys sitting in the sun. One got frizzled up, and then there was 1. See, during the postcard boom, the company headquarters, which was Raphael's home, was destroyed, including the originals for most of their series, and the company never fully recovered. In the end, they merged their business with 2 other companies to become the British Printing Corporation in 1952. I will say this again, not one stone was left unturned in regards to our community being treated as an object of scorn through the usage of stereotypes. I know some of you are probably asking why. Why am I taking this very graphic approach with the visuals in this documentary? Why am I purposely stirring up your emotions as I explain the Hebrew writings on the pews in Savannah, Georgia? To answer these questions, let me start by changing the angle of this third-person visual to a first-person's view. Let me change your camera position from that of a spectator to the position of the actual victim. Let me also add the music as you hear and see these murderers enjoy their picnic. I really want you to get a glimpse of how this brother, as well as other brothers and sisters, would actually see and hear their perpetrators dance and celebrate as the victim took his or her last breath, as they were being tortured for entertainment, as they were being raped, sodomized, beaten, hanged, burdened, burned, and also, believe it or not, eaten. This is the only way, the only angle anyone from outside of our community can truly understand the phrase, walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes.
Devil call his name that he is now. Mr. Northup, I have 2 gentlemen whose acquaintance you should make, Messrs. Brown and Hamilton.
Sir?
Mr. Northup, these 2 gentlemen were inquiring about distinguished individuals, and I was just this very moment saying Solomon Northup is an expert player on the violin. Solomon Northup is an expert player on the violin. Solomon Northup is an expert player on the violin.
The reason for our inquiry with Mr. Moon.
Yes, we are just the devil of a time in procuring music for entertainment. Men of true talents are seemingly in short supply.
Thank you, sir.
If we could persuade you to accompany us as far as Washington, we could give you $1 for each day's services and $3 for every night played at our performances. $3 for every night played at our performances. $3 for every night played at our performances.
Lord has made plain his desire for the African race. Desire for the African race. Desire for the African race. The Lord has set every people of the world against them. People of the world against them. People of the world against them. Lord has made plain his desire for the African race. Desire for the African race. Desire for the African race. I can't breathe. 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 I can't breathe.
Then 239. Show you clear.
Hatred. Unadulterated hatred. Where does it come from? Where does the hatred Caucasians have for black people come from? A hatred passed down from father to son, from mother to daughter, from generation to generation, spanning hundreds, if not thousands of years. Hatred. A hatred which crosses deserts, sails across oceans, that will search and seek out a peaceful, loving people, just to trick, kidnap, mutilate, beat, whip, degrade, murder, and enslave. All for hatred. We can find an example of this hatred in the real life story of Solomon Northup, a victim of white supremacist hatred. Solomon Northup was an affluent family man, a Negro who lived in New York State. Married with a wife and kids, he was known as a talented musician, living peacefully in his home until one fateful day, Solomon Northup was visited by hatred. One fateful March morning, two Caucasian men set their sights on the unsuspecting Solomon Northup. Like predators singling out their prey, so did they fall upon the unsuspecting free Negro named after the son of King David. They lured him to Washington, D.C. with the promise of money, fame, and ease of profit. However, when he reached his destination, he was drugged, chained, beaten, and told that he was now a slave from Georgia. You see, captured Negroes weren't free to declare their identity to their slave masters. They were told their identity by the man with the whip. And in Solomon's case, he was told he was nothing but a nigger from Georgia. But a nigger from Georgia. But a nigger from Georgia.
Your name is Toby. I want to hear you say it. Your name is Toby. You're going to learn to say your name. Let me hear you say it. What's your name?
Kunta Kinte. Kunta Kinte.
When the master gives you something, you take it. He gave you a name. It's a nice name. It's Toby. And it's going to be yours till the day you die. Now, I know you understand me, and I want to hear it. Again! I want to hear you say your name. Your name is Toby. What's your name?
Kunta.
What's your name? Say it. Toby. Who are you? Say your name. What's your name?
Toby.
Being a kidnapped slave, Solomon's name was changed to hide his true identity. In fact, he was the one slave who didn't answer to his name when he arrived in New Orleans because he didn't know it. However, an interesting pattern emerges when we examine the names of the other slaves shipped to New Orleans. We find that many of those slaves had surnames or last names of Spanish and Portuguese brews. You see, many slaves had the names of Spanish and Portuguese brews, just like Olauda Equiado. Olauda Equiado. Olauda Equiado. Olauda Equiado, or as we simply like to call him, Uncle O. Uncle O was an Igbo born in a place called Isaka in Nigeria. However, according to Igbo oral tradition, some Igbo trace their ancient ancestry all the way back to the Iberian Peninsula, and prior to that, all the way back to Israel. Now, that's interesting because Uncle O's place of birth, which is called Isaka is a Basque word, which is from the region of the Iberian Peninsula, aka the homeland of the Spanish and Portuguese brews. Why would Uncle O use an Iberian word for the name of his homeland? You see, fam, Basque is the territory between Spain and France, once called during ancient times by the name Navarre, a place of refuge for Spanish brews who fled from Spain in 1492. Not only that, the name Isaka is also a Hebrew word, meaning Isaac, with a suffix at the end as found in Ancient Hebrew. You see, fam, it appears the place of Uncle O's birth not only lines up with Igbo oral tradition, it also lines up with Uncle O's identity of who the Igbo are today, the children of Israel. As the following reference reads, such is the imperfect sketch my memory has furnished me with of the manners and customs of a people among whom I first drew my breath. And here I cannot forbear suggesting what has long struck me very forcibly, namely the strong analogy which even by this sketch, imperfect as it is, appears to prevail in the manners and customs of my countrymen and those of the Jews before they reached the land of promise, and particularly the patriarchs while they were yet in that pastoral state which is described in Genesis, an analogy which alone would induce me to think that the one people had sprung from the other. Indeed, this is the opinion of Dr. Gill, who, in his commentary on Genesis, very ably deduces the pedigree of the Africans from Aphor and Afra, the descendants of Abraham by Keturah, his wife and concubine, for both these titles were applied to her. It is also comfortable to the sentiments of Dr. John Clark, formerly Dean of Sarum, in his Truth of the Christian Religion. Both these authors concur in ascribing to us this original. The reasonings of these gentlemen are still further confirmed by the scripture chronology, and if any further corroboration were required, this resemblance in so many respects is a strong evidence in support of the opinion. Like the Israelites in their primitive state, our government was conducted by our chiefs, our judges, our wise men and elders, and the head of a family, and with us enjoyed a similar authority over his household with that which is ascribed to Abraham and the other patriarchs. The law of retaliation obtained almost universally with us as with them, and even their religion appeared to have shed upon us a ray of its glory, though broken and spent in its passage, or eclipsed by the cloud with which time, tradition, and ignorance might have enveloped it. For we had our circumcision, a rule I believe peculiar to that people. We had our sacrifices and burnt offerings, our washings and purifications on the same occasion as they had. You see, fam, Uncle O believed the Igbo were indeed the children of Israel. With that in mind, it's no surprise when Uncle O was kidnapped from the west coast of Africa, the very first name the slave catchers called him was Jacob. In fact, he was called Jacob until he reached the shores of North America, where the slave masters literally beat the name of Jacob out of him and gave him the new name Gustavus Vassa. As the following reference reads, and it reads, while I was on board this ship, my captain and master named me Gustava Vassa. I at the time began to understand him a little and refused to be called so. I told him as well as I could that I would be called Jacob, but he said I should not and still called me Gustavus. And when I refused to answer to my new name, which at first I did, it gained me many a cuff. So at length I submitted and was obliged to bear the present name by which I have been known ever since. You see, fam, Uncle O's Igbo connection to Israel goes far beyond just oral traditions and similarities between Igbo and Israel traditions. The Igbo-Israel connection is found in their blood. In fact, many so-called African Americans today who are the descendants of Igbo also show genetic DNA connections to Spain and Portugal and the Basque region. You see, fam, DNA has confirmed Igbo oral traditions, and many so-called African Americans are finding DNA matches with ancient DNA extracted from Old Spanish and Portuguese Brew communities. In other words, fam, Igbo oral tradition confirmed. But maybe you're thinking, well, wait a minute. I thought the Jews were white, and if so, then how can the so-called African Americans be the Blues as well? Well, that's a mystery that Uncle O addressed in his book. You see, even though the Blues appeared to be from different ethnicities, the root of Judah was black. As the following reference reads, and reads, a strong European tradition dating back to the Middle Ages maintained that the Jews were black, or at least swarthy, and finds sharp expression in modern anti-Semitic literature. And the next reference reads, and reads, to this instance I shall add one, which is mentioned by a late writer who, describing the African coast and the European settlements there, has the following passage. There are several other small Portuguese settlements, and one of some note at Matamba, a river in Sierra Leone. The people here called Portuguese are principally persons bred from a mixture of the first Portuguese discoverers with the natives, and now become in their complexion and woolly quality of their hair hair, perfect Negroes, retaining, however, a smattering of the Portuguese language. And now, in this same reference, we're going to skip ahead a few paragraphs to the paragraph that speaks specifically about the Jews. And the reference reads, "But though these facts seem sufficient of themselves to confirm my opinion, they are not the only facts which can be adduced in its support. It can be shown that the members of the very same family, when divided from each other and removed into different countries, have not only changed their family complexion, but that they have changed it to as many different colors as they have gone into different regions of the world. We cannot perhaps a more striking instance than the Jews. These people are scattered over the face of the whole earth. They have preserved themselves distinct from the rest of the world by their religion. And as they never intermarry with any but those of their own sect, so they have no mixture of blood in their veins that should differ from each other. And yet nothing is more than that the English Jew is white, the Portuguese Jew swarthy, the Armenian olive, and the Arabian copper. In short, that there appear to be as many different species of Jews as there are countries in which they reside. To these facts I shall add the following observation, that if we can give credit to the ancient historians in general, a change from the darkest black to the purest white must have actually been accomplished. In other words, fam, this reference Uncle O quoted in his autobiography implies that white Jews came from black Jews. And as you can imagine, this wasn't a revelation that slave masters wanted published, especially when many of America's slaves were in fact Igbo, the people Uncle O believed were Israel. The last thing slave masters wanted the world to know was that they were enslaving none other than the children of Israel. And with that in mind, Uncle O's autobiography attracted many critics. These critics attempted to undermine Uncle O by questioning his connection to Africa. They questioned his heritage, going as far as to say that Uncle O wasn't even African at all, inferring that he was just a nigga from South Carolina. And to promote this lie, critics attempted to use a 1773 Navy muster roll, which listed someone by the name of Gustavo Weston from South Carolina, which is a different name than Gustavo Vassa. And critics tried to say that Weston was indeed Vassa while providing no proof to support their claim. And well, it didn't stop their family, because critics even tried using Gustavo Vassa's baptismal record, in which someone wrote that he was born in South Carolina. However, it's widely understood that slaves did not fill out their own paperwork. That was done by the slave masters, who were at liberty to write anything they wanted on their records, even going as far as to say he was nothing but a nigga from South Carolina. Now fam, Uncle O fought against these attacks and placed additional proof of his Igbo heritage in later editions of his autobiography, even going as far as listing witnesses consisting of admirals and other people of status who could vouch for his character and his origin. When Uncle O's attackers placed a story in a publication called The Oracle questioning his origin, the newspaper recanted the story and provided thoughts on who they believed were responsible for writing the false statements against Uncle O. As the following reference reads, and it reads, "Dear sir, your note of the 30th. I would have answered in course, but wish to first be able to inform you what paper we had taken the article from with respect to Gustavo Vassa. By this day's post, have sent you a copy of the Oracle of Wednesday the 25th. In the last column of the 3rd page, you will find the article from which we inserted, the one in the star of the 27th. If it be erroneous, you will see it had not its origin with us. As to Gustavo Vassa, I know nothing of it." After examining this paragraph in the Oracle, which immediately follows the one in question, I am inclined to believe that the one respecting Gustavo Vassa may have been fabricated by some of the advocates for continuing the slave trade, for the purpose of weakening the force of the evidence brought against the trade. For I believe, if they could, they would stifle the evidence altogether. Having sent you the Oracle, we have sent all that we can say about the business. So you see fam, per their own investigation, they believe that the people who said Uncle O was from South Carolina were people who wanted to continue the transatlantic slave trade. The people who wanted to continue the abuse of the so-called Negro, of the so-called Negro, of the so-called Negro.
In our culture, it's all about the trees. The trees. The trees are everything. You know, we're always gathering around the trees. It's our life. It has always been from the root to the very top. It's all about the trees. What's amazing is people come from all over the world, mainly white people, to see our trees. Hanging trees today. Weeping trees that cry real tears, the bloodline, the red blood. The most famous hanging tree is the angel oak tree. The angel oak tree, a live oak. It's a very popular hanging tree. And people from all over the world come to just look in awe at this massive hanging tree. We have them all over Charleston. Hanging trees everywhere. Here we're off of America Street. We have a beautiful hanging tree. Interesting. The projects. Massa wrote the slave code now. Massa is a Hebrew word that means burden. Massa wrote the slave code that says, keep the man from out of the houses. Cannot stay with the family. The men do not stay with the women and children. The projects now. America Street. There's only one America Street in America. And here we are on America Street projects. Notice another slave auction block. The real money. The real reason for this city now is to sell us. So this combination, real witchcraft, wicked, powerful, evil. Wow. Hanging them on display, selling them on display. Slave auction blocks are everywhere in this city. One side you got the projects. On the other side of the street you got $1 million mansions. Multi-million-dollar mansions on one side and projects just across the street. Damn. What's interesting is the dead foliage, what looks like it's dead, is actually called resurrection fern. Resurrection. If you sprinkle, get a little bit of rain, overnight you come back to life. Beautiful green. Resurrection fern. On the hanging trees. Do we hear that bell? Oh, sound the alarm. Grandmama, I'll be back. I'm going outside to play. Grandmama gonna say, boy, look here now, you better be inside this house before that street light come on, or be inside this house before the sun go down. You better be home before dark. Or Massa is going to whoop your behind. A church steeple is a runaway slave lookout tower. When a slave escapes, because Massa's life is in danger, sound the alarm. The church bells ring. Sound the alarm. You don't hear the church bells when you're in church on Sunday. Huh? Sound the alarm to let everybody know one has gotten away. Your life is in danger. Be on alert. Go get the dog. Slave patrol. Police patrol. Follow the yellow brick road. Follow the yellow brick road to the end of the rainbow. Here we have the Golden House, Mr. William Aiken Rhett's other house, just across the street. At the other end of the hanging trees, picnic. Pick that nigga to hang, right? Right. Heaven. This is heaven for them. Under the houses, under the streets, is where the slaves stayed. Wow. Gold. Check out this color. That's fancy right there now. Golden houses. Follow the yellow brick road to the end of the rainbow. You'll find that pot of gold. The pot of gold is the slaves. Notice the slave door, the privileged slave's door, down low and above, massive double doors, massive, oversized. These doors are only to give you the view. When you open these doors, it's just for the windows. And this is perfectly set up for the hanging trees, for the original drive-in movie theater. The picnics, watching the blacks swing on trees, was a big event everyone looked forward to on Sundays after church service. Usually, although it happened regularly here in this city. Hanging trees, notice the perfect view. Here in heaven, Charleston. Notice the door. Everything in the city is symbolic. And the Gullah Geechee people were symbol readers. Everything you see here is a conversation. My. The pineapple, our culture, the heritage of the people. The peacock, the eyes, the feathers, even the eyes goes to the owl of TripAdvisor, and you can't not see the skulls with the flame of light at the top. And certainly the rope motive. The rope for the hanging trees. When you see these under the home, this tells you that the owner is a ship merchant. They commanded the most money in the slave culture. They brought the slaves in by the ships. But when you see the rope on the houses, either around the door, around the window, maybe on the gates, this tells you that they are selling the hangman's rope. So when you want to hang your slave, purchase your rope from me. This is the money. Charleston was about selling. It was money. It was business. Selling slaves. As a matter of fact, selling slaves. Whenever you sold a slave, you have to be standing on a block. On the block. And the highest bidder wins the prize. A trophy is a slave on a block, and this is a slave auction block. The very common lie in the city is that this is a carriage step. Carriage steps are only at plantation houses. They're very large. You step right into the carriage. This is a slave auction block. Anytime you're sold, you have to be on the block. Charleston was created for one reason. 85% of Charleston owned slaves, 15% rented their property, rental property, sold to the highest bidder. Created just to sell slaves. That's this holy city, Charleston. Many different types of blocks, many different types of slave auction blocks. Charleston is that city that does not name their blocks. Instead, they lie about them and call them something else, something that they are not. Whenever you see these, family, understand where we were sold for money to other people.
Get up in the morning, slaving for bread, sir, so that every mouth can be fed. Oh, me Israelites, up in the morning slaving for bread, sir, so that every mouth can be fed. Oh, be Israelite. Wife and my kids step up and I leave me. Darling, she said I was yours to receive. Oh, be Israelite. Shut them a tear up choices ago. I don't want to end up like Bonnie and Clyde. Oh, be Israelite. After a storm, there must be a calm. Catch me in the palm, you sound your alarm. Oh, be Israelite. In the morning,
Off the slide, yeah. Want to buy, why is why? Tell us right, watch us all. Stand in line for a slice of the devil's pie. For a slice of the devil's pie. For a slice of the devil's pie.
Though I walk through the valley, the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Let me recite this passage again, but from a different translation, a different version. Even when the way goes through Death Valley, I'm not afraid when you walk at my side. Your trusty shepherd's crook makes me feel secure. You serve me a 6-course dinner right in front of my enemies. You revive my drooping head, my cup brims with blessings. So far, this documentary, as it should, has taken you on an emotional roller coaster of anger with the goal of provoking responses such as, enough is enough. When do we collectively as a people take a stand against these religious institutions who have made it a point to demonize us all in the name of their man-made Jesus? Not the Christ, not the Messiah, not the anointed one of the ancient holy text. It's interesting how it's medically proven through Emory University that traumatic experiences of a parent generation can pass down certain behaviors to the child generations in the form of strongholds. So let me partially quote the 23rd book of Psalms, verse 5 again from the Message Bible. You serve me a 6-course dinner right in front of my enemies. Let me say it one more time. You serve me a 6-course dinner right in front of my enemies. Understand this. Traumatic experiences such as our ancestors being forced to stand on slave blocks throughout cities like Charleston, South Carolina, Richmond, Virginia, Savannah, Georgia, and other cities as cattle and were sold to the highest bidder. But today, our men, our women, through the hip-hop and R&B culture, embrace and sensationalize how we now voluntarily stand on city blocks we don't own, selling drugs created and sponsored by the pharmaceutical companies owned by the sons and daughters of those who have enslaved us. Pressing to stand on city blocks, selling their products with the goals and dreams of getting a slice of the devil's pie. Let me simplify what I just said. We were forced to stand on blocks as product and sold to the highest bidder by our oppressors. Now we sensationalize voluntarily standing on blocks, selling their products to the highest bidder for the sake of having a slice of the devil's pie. What is the devil's pie? The devil's pie is actually called Satan's tongue. The devil's pie is the power of manipulation with the goal of getting whatever you want by any means necessary. See, not only does the culture of hip-hop and R&B sensationalize standing on repackaged slave blocks, but there's also preachers who look like you, who look like me, who preach and teach lessons that are heavily influenced by the devil's pie standing high in their pulpits, which are nothing more than glorified slave blocks as they pursue a slice of the devil's pie by selling out their own people. What is the devil's pie? In mathematics, pi, Pi, is written as the Greek letter for the English letter P. Pi, Pi, is the ratio of the circumference of any circle to the diameter of that circle. A history of pi notes that by 2000 BC, the Babylonians and the Egyptians were well aware of the existence of pi, Pi. Pi, Pi, again, is the ratio of the circumference of any circle or pi to the diameter of that circle or pi, P-I-E. Pi, Pi, again, is a Greek letter within the Greek language. And the Greek language is a slice of a bigger pie called the Proto-Indo-European language, PIE. The word circle is synonymous to pi, P-I-E, and the word circle is also synonymous to the word circus. And the word circus is synonymous to the word church. And so in the church or circle, in the pi, P-I-E, or in the circus, the ringmaster, or should I say ringleader, exhibits to his audience his control, his influence, and manipulation over their enslaved animals by having them sit, stand, and perform on their blocks at his command. For the third time again, we have our own people voluntarily stand on city blocks, and we have crooked pastors holding down their pulpit, or should I say their block, bragging about how much block work they are putting in on borrowed time until the 13th Amendment eventually kicks in, for them to eventually be incarcerated and held in a cell, S-A-L-E, block, repeating the cycle all over again as the owners of these prisons pay them a fraction of what they have earned off them as they outsource their labor to the highest bidder. But the rabbit hole doesn't stop there. It gets even deeper, starting with spiritual wickedness in high places. An example of this is PBS in their series, The Black Church, produced by Henry Louis Gates. The slice of the devil's pie.
Off the slide, yeah, want to buy, why is why? Jealous ride, watch us all, stand in line, for a slice up the devil's pie, for a slice up the devil's pie, for a slice up the devil's pie.
The people who built these pews paid homage to Christ, but also left a surprising trace of another African religious past, Islam.
This is Arabic type of writing.
It's amazing that it survived.
Oh, yes.
I'm sure that if Christians knew that it was a Muslim, they would have just painted it over. Or something.
Maybe. Those who also wrote this, they may be Christian themselves. But for them, religion is a continuity. Different ways of maybe worship, but it's the same God, the same principle. And it was written to be a legacy for the future generations.
All right, everybody. Of course, you know this is Bishop William Brown here. I'm sitting here with the director of the First African Baptist Church, the world famous First African Baptist Church. Everyone knows the background. My family, as well as Dr. Kelly Richardson, our family is a part of this great history of the church. And I think I want to also thank Pastor Curry for sitting down with me and us having this conversation. This is a great brother. And so let's jump right into it, Pastor Curry. The first question I want to talk about, you know, everybody knows about the PBS documentary. That was a big deal. A lot of people talked about it from both sides. You know, you had some people, even some of the Baptists
that I know hit me up and say, man, what's going on? This sounds a little crazy here, what they talking about. But I got a chance to speak to the producers of the PBS documentary, and they shared with me some things and whatnot regarding the church and their conclusion and things with Arabic and things like that. So what was it when they shared with me? They said it was kind of an uproar when they was filming, they had to stop. So if you want to kind of go into the uproar of what happened and who was a part of it.
Even before we go there, we had actually had members of someone from the church take pictures of the pews, and we sent it around to a lot of, what's the terminology, people who study linguists.
Right.
Translators. To first of all figure out, if it was Arabic, and if it was, what did it say? Many were like, it is Arabic, but it's a earlier version of Arabic that we do not know. So Boubacar, who was from, I think West Africa, was able to him and someone else were able to actually translate what it was. And so we brought him down, and as we were filming, there was another woman who is a member of that church who was saying, no, that is Hebrew. So she believes it's just it's a cursive version, there's such a version of cursive back then, of Hebrew.
We had another executive director, whereas originally the whole PBS interview was supposed to be done by our executive pastor, which is, call his name, Reverend Marco George. Reverend Marco George was in negotiations with PBS, and there were certain things that PBS was planning to say. They had their agenda set forth before they even got here. They already had their scholars, everybody, dates, times that scholars would come. There wasn't no previous research. There was just PBS in their plan. But Marco, Reverend George, was having an issue with some of the stuff that they wanted to do. So therefore, he kind of put them on the back burner. They reached out to other people, not calling other people's names, but they reached out to other people. And other people decided that, we'll take it out of his hands and we'll pass it on to who was the current executive director of George Lau Visions. And so the current executive director went with the game plan. They came in, this crazy part is I was out doing other stuff, and I just happened to come here, didn't even know that they were actually coming. So when I showed up, asking questions, and then so I went upstairs to listen to interviews and what they were talking about. And then they were saying, they were bringing this trained Arabic professor from Harvard in, and he was gonna, talk about the pews. And so, I took it upon myself to ask him a few questions beforehand. And so when I asked him questions, and I said, we've had Jewish individuals come in and actually have transcribed this pew over here, just based off of a eye shot, not necessarily taking, anything back to a laboratory, dissecting it or anything like that. And so, based off of the information that I received from that gentleman and Miss Karen Wortham, the information that she had received as well, she's our church historian. So, I asked her to come because I knew that there was going to be some stuff. So therefore, they went ahead and started producing. And I was like, why is this gentleman here saying that this is going to be Arabic, or this is Arabic and all of this stuff based off of the information that we've already given you? Aren't you here for the truth? Oh, yeah, we're here for the truth, but, we're going to meet with him. And so, then, that became a back and forth between me and the producer.
So when you say back and forth, it sounded to me, they told me it was kind of a heated exchange in a way.
Well, it was heated because I got heated. I told him, I said, no, I said, for you to come and you're going to make this an international thing. And now we have an international audience. We have people that come from all over the world based off of the history in which we give to the public. I say, so now you're telling me that, and an Arabic professor makes it eye shot, has not been here more than 10 minutes, just got off the plane, but he can explain everything that happened here culturally. I said, no. I said, and as far as I'm concerned, y'all should be done filming. And you should leave, because I don't appreciate, what's actually going on here.
Off the slide, yeah, want to buy, why is why? Till it's right, watch us all, stand in line, for a slice up the devil's pie, for a slice up the devil's pie, for a slice up the devil's pie.
So well, I guess that kind of leads into the next question, because, so let me ask you this. So it's always been, and I talked to Karen Wortham, excellent historian, and she said it's always been Hebrew. That's been, for as we know, generations it's been passed down.
This is First African Baptist Church, the oldest black church in North America. The building built by slaves. The gentleman that laid the first brick laid the last. The balcony hold pews that actually were built by slaves. They have the oldest information in this building. That information is written in cursive Hebrew writing.
So why the church website goes from Hebrew to, for maybe a couple of years, saying it was Arabic? Can you kind of get into that and kind of share with the audience to kind of clear that up and get some understanding on that?
Right. One of our vendors, because I heard him say it on one of his tours. Well, right now we have no vendors that are coming to the church because we're trying to sort out all of what's actually going on. And I heard him say it on one of his tours, and I asked him, I said, well, why do you say it's Arabic and everyone else before has said it's Hebrew? And he was like, well, I do read Arabic and all this stuff, and this is what this pew said. I said, is that based off of any history, any research, or is it just based off of what you eye spot or what you think you see? Well, mainly what I eye spot. And so, and I, talked to him about it. But when they originally did a documentary, he was the one that, with the executive director that was removed, he was the one that spoke with that executive director. She called him in to be the subject matter expert. And so when he was saying that it was Arabic, she went along with it, which she not necessarily knew the history or not necessarily researched the history for herself. And so she made the executive because, as I stated earlier, George Lau Vision covers all of tourism. So she made the executive decision to change on the website that it wasn't, because they were originally on the website were saying Hebrew or
cursive Hebrew, yeah.
But then she changed on the website to a Arabic,
so
based off of his.
Right. So with that, with her position of authority, did she have the authority to change that without giving the church, the Lao history part, any update or anything? She could just change it, don't tell anybody anything.
Absolutely.
And it's that's
complete
what it
autonomy.
is.
She had complete autonomy, because a lot of times, and a lot of the issue that I've been dealing with as executive director is helping the congregation to understand not only the history, but their role in the history.
Right.
So when you have people that are not truly connected to the congregation, it's not about the congregation, it becomes about that person's own personal interest.
Right.
And so, and that's just like with the PBS, I don't know if somebody else was getting a kickback for them to be able to come in and say that. So, you never know what's actually going on behind the scenes if you're not the one that sets up everything, in which, me coming in, probably through a monkey wrench and whatever else they had going on, because, I had done so much research at that time, because, I was coming into the role of being, I was actually doing the tours at that time. And so with the amount of research and the amount of legwork that I had put in, I didn't want anybody coming in and stepping on where we had gone as far as tourism was actually concerned. And that was my whole goal, was to help people to understand that the accuracy of what we were given versus what had been done in previous years.
Off the slide, want to buy, why is why? Till it's right, watch us all, stand in line, for a slice up a devil's pie, for a slice up a devil's pie, for a slice up a devil's pie.
This is Arabic type of writing.
It's amazing that it survived.
Oh, yes.
I'm sure that if Christians knew that it was a Muslim, they would have just painted it over. Or something.
Maybe.
Back to PBS, where they wanted to make it seem like, okay, well, these Muslim Christians, which is a lie beyond all lies, because we know that Muslims are more proud of their religion than anything. They're not gonna play. They don't do the back burner. I don't care how much danger. They think that dying for their religion is what it's all about. Well, most of them do, not all of them. Don't get me confused. But whereas they wanted to make it seem like, okay, these Muslims were hiding in plain sight here in a Christian church.
Yeah, and then they tried to partner Sapelo Island up the street, where the Muslims were two First African Baptists in Savannah, and they have no correlation or relation.
Zero.
But that's how they started off with the documentary getting here. But that's how they started off with the documentary getting here.
Off the slide, want to buy, why is why? Till it's right, watch us all, stand in line, for a slice up a devil's pie, for a slice up a devil's pie, for a slice up a devil's pie.
Our pastor has been here for 40 years. And the makeup of the church is mainly a senior makeup. I mean, where we literally had to, due to the pandemic, we literally had to teach them how to go on Facebook. They would go on Facebook and they would know how to scroll up and down and read whatever, but how to set a notification for a live function. So there was not much interaction concerning, the website. I had to literally push our church's website to the forefront. I mean, as an executive director, I don't really have time to be calling and making constant updates to the website. So I literally had to, push that to the forefront, something that they would use, something that we could use to push people to our website. And it was foreign, even at the beginning of the pandemic in 2020, to have them to understand, okay, you don't have to go to the church to go live. You can go anywhere and go live. And when you look at the pastor has been here for 40 years. So that means that most of the congregation, if they haven't died off, has been here for 40 plus years. So you're looking at a demographic that he's 66 and he was 27 when he got here. So most of the people, if he was 27 when he got here, most of them was in their 40s. And so now their children and their children's children are in their 40s. So when you think of young adult ministry here, the average age is 40.
Wow.
And when because young adults everywhere else is between the ages of 17 and 25. But the young adult ministry here is 40.
Wow.
So needless to say, outside of coming to church, the young adult ministry doesn't do what a regular young adult ministry would do, with coming in and saying, hey, we need to update this on the website. The website is saying this, the website is saying that.
So it can easily slip under the rug.
Oh man, easily. When an executive director has complete autonomy and their focus may not be so much the congregation and the interest and the needs of the congregation.
Right.
And it could just be that, I have a relationship with this person, so I believe what this person is saying. Versus, I've never known it to be that. So how can all of a sudden it be that?
Off the slide, yeah, want to buy, why is why? Tell us right, watch us all, stand in line, for a slice up a devil's pie, for a slice up a devil's pie, for a slice up a devil's pie.
The people who built these pews paid homage to Christ, but also left a surprising trace of another African religious past, Islam.
I want to respond to this overreaching, blatant lie Henry Louis Gates, his team, along with PBS stated in their documentary, The Black Church. This is our story. This is our song. Henry Louis Gates claims that the writings on the pews pays homage to another African religious past, Islam. He and others have tried to link the First African Baptist Church of Savannah, Georgia to the First African Baptist Church in Sapelo Island, and more specifically Raccoon Bluff, which is about 60 miles away. The First African Baptist Church at Raccoon Bluff was founded in 1866. The First African Baptist Church of Savannah, Georgia was founded almost a century earlier in 1773 and constituted in 1777, which means that there is no connection between these two churches outside of their Christian religion and denominational affiliations. And more importantly, there is no connection to Islam. How was Henry Louis Gates and his staff able to force a connection between the First African Baptist Church of Savannah, Georgia and First African Baptist Church at Raccoon Bluff? How and who did they deceptively use to create this illusion of this supposed connection to Islam? The answer to this question is through two Muslim slaves, Salih Bilali, who was born around 1790 in Messina along the Niger River, and Bilali Muhammad, who is known for the Bilali manuscripts or diary. Bilali Muhammad was born in Timbo, Guinea in 1770 and died in 1857. Bilali Muhammad came from a Muslim family and was highly educated. But there is not a single document that supports the notion that these two Muslims attended the First African Baptist Church at Raccoon Bluff, nor did they ever set foot in the First African Baptist Church of Savannah, Georgia. Again, First African Baptist Church of Raccoon Bluff was founded in 1866, and Bilali Muhammad died in 1857. Several sources say that Bilali Muhammad had a cabin on the mainland opposite of Sapelo Island. Before the building of the First African Baptist Church at Raccoon Bluff, there were several praise houses that were used for the place of worship for slaves and later for their free descendants. The location of these praise houses included those at Shell Hammock, Lumber Landing, and Hog Hammock. The praise house located at Hog Hammock was designated for the members of the First African Baptist Church at Raccoon Bluff. To be used during the week, this praise house was able to hold 12 adults, and meetings were conducted on Tuesday and Thursday nights. So what's interesting about the First African Baptist Church at Raccoon Bluff is that this church is vital to the Gullah Geechee culture that evolved in the coastal regions of South Carolina and Georgia in the 17th and 18th centuries. Now let's focus on the Bilali manuscripts written by Bilali Muhammad. Scholars and linguists Joseph Greenberg of Northwestern University believe that it is quite likely that the Bilali diary was written with a standard Arab kind of pen or qalam on a well-known sort of Italian paper. This is coming from the Georgia Historical Quarterly, Fall 1994, Volume 78, Number 3, page 596. It reads, "The calligraphic style of the Bilali diary deserves some comment. It is the script of a person who wrote, but rarely. It is a crude version of one of the common varieties of Arabic script formerly used in West Africa. As A.D.H. Bavars points out in his analysis of Arabic calligraphy, practiced by West Africans, this style of writing was often used for text in the Hausa and perhaps for Fulde languages, but in Arabic script, like some of the other styles of Arabic used in the region. It is ultimately derived from Kufic through the Afriki style of North Africa. Now, skipping down to the third paragraph, which provides some interesting points. It says, although a minor point, it confirms the fact that the writer of the original text, like his copyist, Sunni Muslim, and doubtless a Maliki too. Further down on folio 2, there is a clear mention of our master Muhammad. In other words, Balana Muhammad, as the messenger of God, Rasul Allah, on lines 3, 7, 9, and 10. Despite these isolated words and phrases and other coherent patches visible here, it is hard to seize the main thread of the chapter. As Greenberg surmised, it is probably about the performance of prayer. Now I want you to make a note of the following quotes: our master Muhammad and messenger of God. On page 597, it says this: on the first line of folio 4R is mention of unbelief. On line 3, another chapter heading appears with the words babe drawn out across the page as before. Here, the theme of ritual washing begins, and much of it can be read. So before we read the second paragraph on page 598, I want you to listen closely to the words of the PBS staff from a Q&A session held on Clubhouse immediately following the premiere of the Black Church, This Is Our Story, This Is Our Song. This is where it really gets dicey. Listen with intelligence.
So I did just find the email. So the scriptures, the ones that we sent him of the pews, the side pews, there's like one that looks like a squiggly line is Muhammad is his messenger, and the other one that he translated was no God but Allah.
Now the Henry Louis Gates staff said, according to Boubacar, that the pew in question along with another pew says Muhammad is his messenger and no God but Allah. Now let's read the second paragraph on page 598. It says, at the end of the section on washing, the diarist or copyist seemed to diverge from copying a text or recalling it. With folio 5R, he lapsed into his own brand of piety over and over, perhaps 7 times in the following 5 folia. He wrote, "O God, I bear witness that there is no God but God." Usually, he added to this phrase, and Muhammad is the messenger of God. Now, is this strictly a coincidence that we see almost identical quotes from the Balali diary and what the PBS staff quoted? Is it strictly a coincidence that the quotes from the diary and Muhammad is the messenger of God truncated to Muhammad is his messenger and "O God, I bear witness that there is no God but God" truncated to "no God but Allah"? After doing a deep dive, a deeper study on the phrases Muhammad is his messenger and no God but Allah, I discovered its connection to what is called the Shahada. There is no God but Allah and Muhammad is his messenger. This is part of the Shahada. In other words, the Islamic statement of faith. See, the Shahada is the basic statement of the Islamic faith, and anyone who cannot recite this wholeheartedly is not, according to Islam, a Muslim. So when a Muslim recites the Shahada, they are proclaiming 3 things. Number 1, that Allah is the only God and that Muhammad is his prophet. Number 2, that they personally accept this as true. And number 3, that they will obey all the commitments of Islam in their life. See, Henry Louis Gates and his staff, along with PBS, made a very deceptive joint effort to guide the eyes and ears, so to speak. of all who chose to watch and listen to their deceptive depiction of First African Baptist Church of Savannah, Georgia, again formed in 1773, and the First African Baptist Church of Raccoon Bluff, formed in 1866. That's almost 10 years after Bilali Muhammad's death. They want you to believe that cryptic Muslims worship in this Baptist church, and the writings on the pews in question, as well as others, is the Islamic statement of faith called the Shahada. You can't make this up. You can't make this up.
Off the slide, yeah, want to buy, why is why? Till it's right, watch us all, stand in line, for a slice up a devil's pie, for a slice up a devil's pie, for a slice up a devil's pie.
There is an honorable and very respectable title that's revered at the First African Baptist Church of Savannah, Georgia. This title is highlighted in the book titled The History of the First African Baptist Church from its organization January 20th, 1788 to July 1st, 1888. This book was written by First African Baptist Church's own Reverend Emmanuel K. Love, D.D. He was one of the pastors and pillars of this historical landmark, who was referred to as a prince in Israel. On the wall behind the piano to the right side of the pulpit hangs a plaque dedicated to Reverend Emmanuel K. Love for his work in leading First African Baptist Church. Written on this plaque, we see that he is again referred to as a prince in Israel. It reads, born in Marion, Alabama, July 27, 1850, died Savannah, Georgia, April 24, 1900, age 49 years, pastor, First African Baptist Church, 14 years and 6 months, a prince and a great man, fallen this day in Israel. 2 Samuel chapter 3 verse 38, hard by truth's temple, a lovely being stood, arrayed in white, the symbol of his God. In this historical handbook, we see the reoccurring phrase, Father in Israel, and more specifically in Israel. The phrase used to describe the character of Reverend Andrew C. Marshall, who was referred to as a venerable father in Israel. On page 42 it says, Andrew C. Marshall was born a slave. He was traveled over a great part of the United States. He has by industry succeeded in purchasing himself and done many benevolent acts among his color, and has given to different institutions several $1,000s. The venerable father in Israel, Andrew C. Marshall, died in Richmond, Virginia, December 7, 1855. While returning from the north to the people of his charge. For nearly or quite half a century, he was a laborious and indefatigable workman in the vineyard of his master. The founder and first pastor of First African Baptist Church of Savannah, Georgia, Reverend Andrew Bryan, was referred to as a father in Israel. On page 203, it says, when he was commanded not to preach the gospel, he raised his dusky hand, stained in his own blood, drawn by his vile persecutors, and said with a trembling voice, with that manly heroism and Christian courage that the grace of God alone can fan into burning eloquence, if you would stop me from preaching, cut off my head. This humble statement from our Father in Israel amazed and ashamed his ungodly persecutors. This humble slave, using the weapon of warfare, which is not carnal but mighty through God, conquered these human brutes, and through Christ won a signal victory for the church. Our fathers planted the banner of the Lord here in sweat, tears, and blood, around which their children have rallied for 100 years. Our troubles have been great, our trials many, but we have not yielded an inch of ground to the enemy. On page 183, Deacon Willis Harris is referred to as someone who caused troubles and heartaches in Israel. On page 183, it says, he was caught stealing from a Mr. Douglas in whose employ he was. The extent of his stealings has never been determined. He had many dollars worth of goods bid about the church, being at the time sexton of the church, and many more at his home. He was arrested, found guilty, and sentenced to 7 years in the penitentiary at hard labor, where he is still. This was a righteous retribution for the troubles and heartaches he caused in Israel. The frowns of Almighty God seem to have rested upon the man. Again, in Israel was a very honorable and weighty title at First African Baptist Church of Savannah, Georgia. Again, we see Prince in Israel on the plaque dedicated to Reverend Emmanuel K. Love. We see Venerable Father in Israel used as a title for the late Reverend Andrew C. Marshall. We see Father in Israel used for the founder of this church, Reverend Andrew Bryan. Lastly, we see Deacon Willis Harris accused of causing troubles and heartaches in Israel. However, there is another place where the name Israel is written, another place that clearly says Israel, a place I can emphatically prove it's not paying homage to Islam, nor is it proclaiming the Shahada, which is again the Islamic statement of faith.
Off the slide, yeah, want to buy, why is why? Jealous ride, watch a song, stand in line, phone will slice up a devil's spine, phone will slice up a devil's spine, phone will slice up a devil's spine.
I had it. A map to freedom. Ain't no such thing as a map to freedom. Word for word. Show me the way. I carved it out on the wall. You ought to rest now. Listen, you gotta have faith. You run. You follow that map. And you a free man. I've seen the devil's grin. But I miss the angel's light. You be ready when you get to that river.
The Yod is basically a dot, so that would come out like this. That's Yod. The letter Zayin is written this way. Resh takes this form in square, and in Judaismo it tends to be a tall letter, so it's either written above the other letters this way, and it often has a loop on top. The Yod is basically a dot, so that would come out like this. That's Yod. Lamed, which is written this way in square, takes several forms in Judaismo, in Soletreo. Up until around the end of the 19th century, it tended to be written this way. And then from then on, the predominant forms are this form in Turkey, this form in Salonika, and additional forms like this in other parts of the Judaismo-speaking world. Additional forms like this in other parts of the Judaismo-speaking world. The Yod is basically a dot, so that would come out like this, that's Yod. Mem, which is written this way in square. This is the initial and medial mem, so it occurs at the beginning and in the middle of words. That in Soletreo takes several forms. One is simply this. The other is a little more complicated, and there are several others, but these two are the basic forms. The Yod is basically a dot, so that would come out like this, that's Yod. The letter Zayin is written this way. Resh takes this form in square, and in Judaismo it tends to be a tall letter, so it's either written above the other letters this way, and it often has a loop on top. The Yod is basically a dot, so that would come out like this, that's Yod. Lamed, which is written this way in square, takes several forms in Judaismo and Soletreo. Up until around the end of the 19th century, it tended to be written this way. And then from then on, the predominant forms are this form in Turkey, this form in Salonika, and additional forms like this in other parts of the Judaismo-speaking world. The Yod is basically a dot, so that would come out like this, that's Yod. Mem, which is written this way in square. This is the initial and medial mem, so it occurs at the beginning and in the middle of words. That in Soletreo takes several forms. One is simply this. The other is a little more complicated, and there are several others, but these two are the basic forms.
Get up in the morning slaving for bread, sir, so that every mouth can be fed. Oh, me Israelites, get up in the morning slaving for bread, sir, so that every mouth can be fed. See